What's up, house groups? Welcome to 2024. It's good to be back after a few weeks off for the holidays. On Sunday, we kicked off a new year with a new series called Burn the Ships, and we're talking about the things from our past we need to let go of, to get rid of, so we can press forward toward the futures God has for us without retreating back to our past. And this week, we're talking about guilt because it's universal. We all have it. We've all messed up. We've all run from God, hurt people, hurt ourselves, and hurt the world because of the mistakes we've made and the choices we've chosen. And it's difficult for us as human beings not to get really hung up on that, not to define ourselves by our greatest failures and wrap our identity up in our biggest regrets. They're like anchors for our souls sometimes that just hold us back from ever making any meaningful progress because something inside us is convinced our past mistakes are the lid that limits the futures God could possibly be trying to give us. And the truth is, if we get hung up on our history, it will rob us of our destiny. But the question for all of us is how do we burn that ship then and move forward, especially in the middle of a world that constantly reminds us of our failures and points us back to our guilt? That's how our whole culture operates, right? Well, I think what Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 5 is actually some game-changing stuff for us as we struggle to overcome the wounds and the weight of our worst moments. He says, so from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, they're a new creation. The old is gone. The new is here. And I love this so much because Paul's like, hey, we're used to defining ourselves by the terms our culture uses to define us. We're used to looking in the mirror and seeing our failures and seeing our greatest mistakes. Because that's the worldly way of seeing them. So, of course, that's how we do it. That's how we look at ourselves. But Paul wants to change the game, and he's onto something here. You guys know why so many of us feel condemned? It's because we know who we really are. I know who Mike really is. All of us, we know what we've really done. We know the kinds of thoughts that have run through our minds, and every last one of us can't help but wonder sometimes, if everybody else knew who I really am, if they knew everything I've done and everything I've said and everything I've thought, would they still love me? And we doubt it. We doubt that God would even still love us. We see ourselves through what Paul terms a worldly point of view, and the weight of our mistakes feels crushing. We self-identify as failures. But Paul looks at us and he says, wait up. When we meet Jesus, when we give our lives to him, we don't regard anyone, not even ourselves, from a worldly point of view any longer. Because if anyone's in Christ, they're new. Our identity in Jesus is completely transformed. And I think for all of us, if we're ever going to get past our past, we got to understand we are not what we've done. We are who God says we are. We are not what's been done to us. We are who God says we are. And that means through Jesus, every single one of us can claim this is true. God sees me differently than I see myself. God sees me differently than the world sees me. And this is so foundational that God sees us differently than we see ourselves. And if it's true, if God sees me differently and I am who he says I am, then that changes the whole way that I relate to the pain and the mistakes and the failures that I've been kind of hanging on to. I'm not going to ever be able to forget them. Even if I burn the ship of guilt, there's no way to erase the things I've done from my memory. But my identity is no longer going to be wrapped up in what I've done or what's been done to me. Instead, it's going to be found in what Jesus did for me, which means that my past will inform me, but it will not deform me. My past will educate me, but it will not devastate me. Not anymore. That's the beauty of the gospel, you guys. What Jesus did with his death and resurrection set us free, and it totally changed our identity. And so here's my 2 action steps for claiming that new identity and burning the ship we call guilt. Number 1, admit your mistakes. Just confess them to God. You're not going to be right with God until you're real with him. And also, he knows what you've done anyway. So admit your mistakes to God and also confess them to the people you hurt. You can live totally forgiven and set free by God and still have this feeling like guilt is inside your soul and it's got a grip on you and you can't get rid of it if you never own it and take steps to make it right in the lives of those you've hurt. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's profoundly liberating. So confess, admit it, and ask God to transform your heart so you can work to set things right with other people and also not do it again. And then step number 2, accept God's forgiveness. Like, truly accept it. Really believe that it counts for you, not just others, but you. Because your sin is not bigger than Jesus' sacrifice. And I just think for you, for me, for all of us, if we can admit our mistakes and accept God's forgiveness, we can begin to see ourselves and our future from a God's eye view rather than a worldly one. We can burn that ship called guilt and start moving from where we are to the place God has for us next.